everybody, welcome to another episode of Blue Collar Real Estate. I'm Greg Mayo.
And I am Ryan.hergott. Greg, we are on feels like a year and a half of lockdown at this point, and real estate's still continuing. I just saw an article in the Indianapolis Business Journal this morning that March sales were up substantially over what they thought. So despite all this Corona stuff, things are busy as can be right now, which is super, super encouraging. And I know that when we bring our guest on here in a little bit, we're going to talk about that too, because title has been overwhelmed, it sounds like, with all these closings too. So it's exciting that the world's not stopped amidst all of this coronavirus stuff.
It is. And I found out yesterday, and I guess I just didn't realize, there are states that do not consider real estate and all the things that surround it as essential business. Mm-hmm. So we're very fortunate here in Indiana to be able to keep doing what we're doing. Things are changing, right? And things are changing with the mortgage end, which our sponsor, Stacy Mayo and the Scott Miller team at Ruoff Mortgage. I talk to Stacy a lot. And things are changing, and government-backed programs are changing. They've completely stopped Indiana housing programs, for example, the down payment assistance. But even with that, you're exactly right. We're still moving. I know you've been running a lot of appointments. I did my first virtual listing appointment on a Zoom call this week, which is kind of cool. Had a nice, crisp, freshly pressed button down on and a pair of camo cargo shorts and flip-flops. So that was kind of a good appointment.
Keeping it rocking. So one of the things I'm really excited to talk about today is, you mentioned one of the things that, has changed is lending guidelines have evolved. One of the, things that's happened there, just to kind of put it in layman's terms for a lot of people that aren't keeping up on the nitty gritty of real estate is, in essence, we hit the reset button back to 2012 from a lending practices standpoint, meaning, guidelines just where they were really, really loose before, now they've really contracted a little bit more. And, as an example, some of the programs that you mentioned that made it easier for people to get into a home for no money down are temporarily off the table. We've also seen credit score requirements go up, and what I mean when I say 2012 is, as an example, a lot of banks at that time could not do an FHA loan. And FHA is one of the most popular loans in the state of Indiana. I think 6 out of 10 people do one. It's just a very easy to qualify for, a very good loan. And where it used to be you could do one of those with a 580 credit score, now that's up to a 620 credit score and even higher for some specific banks. So, if you have questions on that, we can certainly dive into that. But more importantly, for the sake of this episode, we're going to dive into something called title. And, understanding, when you buy a house, how do you make sure that there's no outstanding liens, collections, judgments? Nobody's going to come knocking on your door saying, hey, I put a roof on this thing 5 years ago, never got paid. How do you protect yourself? And title is a world where it's been very, very much the same over the last, 20 years. But, in light of a lot of this Corona stuff, it's really evolving and changing super, super rapidly. So I'm going to bring on our guest, Miss Beth Ford with Abstract and Title here in Indiana. And Beth, welcome to the show. Thanks for taking a few minutes out of your Friday morning to come on. We're super excited to have you today and break down this topic for everybody.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. This is kind of a crazy time right now, but everyone is getting through and real estate is still moving, and we are excited about that. We want to keep the economy going the best we can, and there's no better way to do it than in real estate.
Well, that is definitely the truth. So Beth, give our listeners a little bit of your background, because you've been in real estate a long, long time. You've seen so much of this business and how it's evolved from, kind of pre-internet days to with the evolution of just everything. You've been around title for a long time. So tell everybody your story in a nutshell and kind of what you've been working on and what you're excited about as we move forward here.
Yeah, so I've been in the business about 30 years, a little bit over 30 years. It's changed a lot. You used to have days where agents would go show a house and they had to meet with the other agent to get keys to go show a home. That has changed drastically. Just technology. We used to have fax machines and typewriters and type checks and payoffs and manually type mortgages, and that has evolved greatly over time. So right now we're at a point where everything is going digital. It's exciting. The coronavirus pandemic has catapulted that into urgency to get it done quicker than anticipated, but it's great because it's forcing us to be innovative. Buyers and sellers can sign purchase agreements electronically, and we want to be able to do that as part of the closing as well. So this is it's exciting for us. It's a transition, but we're working through it, and the lenders have to work through it as well. But we're getting there, and we're excited about it.
So let's back up for a minute, because most people, they buy a home every few years, right? And their only interaction with title is when they sit down to sign a giant stack of papers, and that's kind of it. So help us understand what exactly a title company does for a buyer and a seller.
Okay, that's a great point. So there's really two components to title. There's the title search and the title insurance component, and then there's also an escrow component, which most buyers and sellers are familiar with. That's the actual signing the documents, getting everything recorded, transferring money, paying off loans, getting new loans, that type of thing. On the search side, it's the pre-work before we get to that point where we search the records of the property. It goes way back to the 1800s on searching properties and finding that timeline of every single thing that's happened on that property. So when you buy a house, you want to make sure that there are no things that have happened as part of that public record that could affect your interest in the property. You're buying a home. It's a lot of money. It's your investment. It's one of the biggest investments you're going to make in your life. You want to make sure that somebody doesn't knock on the door and say, hey, you owe me money. My third cousin owned a part of this property 20 years ago, and I'm taking possession of that. So what we do in a short version is we search those public records and make sure anything that could come as a lien or interest in your property, we satisfy that to make sure that when you're making that investment that it's a sound investment and it won't get taken away from you. So that's in a nutshell how that works. And so a lot of people don't understand, just understandably so. When you buy insurance, usually you're buying insurance for future events. Homeowners insurance is an example. You pay a yearly premium. So each year you pay that premium for a future event that may affect your property. Title insurance is different. We're looking backwards to make sure anything from previous cannot affect your property. So that's a one-time title insurance fee for your closing to protect you in the future from previous events. So it's kind of hard to explain in an easy format, but that's in essence what it is.
So let me just kind of dive a couple steps deeper into that, Beth. I mean, from the standpoint of, title insurance, what are some of the more common things when you guys do a search and exam on a property? What are some of the more common things that you guys see pop up? I know you and I are working on one right now that was probably 6 pages deep of things that popped up. Yeah. So that's probably the most extreme example I've seen in a while. But, what are some of the more common things that you see pop up when you do a title search that maybe a homeowner is not aware of, or a reason why a buyer needs to make sure that they do their research and are working with a great title company like
right yours? Yeah, good question. So a popular thing that shows up is an old mortgage was paid off on a property, but the bank did not file the actual mortgage release. And so we have to go through that process to make sure that bank releases that lien so a prior owner's mortgage doesn't affect title. Another example is homeowners association dues. If a previous owner or the current owner hasn't paid their homeowners association dues, those can be a lien against the property, which they can come and then make you pay for that if you are the next owner. There are any judgments if a seller or a previous seller has a judgment against them for a credit card they owed or something, mechanics lien, property, work on the home, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of things that can show up, and it's our job to make sure if those things shows up, we get those satisfied so the buyer has peace of mind.
So if Ryan's selling a house and I'm buying it, okay, and Ryan didn't pay his plumber and his electrician as he's wont to do, kidding, dude. Anyway, just for the example, so then the plumber and the electrician, they both file a mechanics lien, right? Now right. I go to buy it, right or wrong, I can't get what's called clean title as long as Ryan still owes people money, right? That's the gist of what you're saying.
So there's some stipulation on timeframes when a contractor can file a mechanics lien, but if the mechanics lien exists, we aren't going to allow that buyer and close on that property until we either satisfy it ahead of time or pay it as part of the closing to make sure that it's not going to show up later. Also, if he hired a contractor 2 weeks before closing and a lien hasn't actually been filed yet, Ryan would attest to us at closing that he doesn't owe any contractors. If by chance then after closing that contractor files a lien, we will take care of that for the buyer because they have an owner's policy. But then we would go back to Ryan and say, Ryan, you signed this affidavit saying that you paid your contractor, and then we would make sure that he makes us good.
Ryan.
Right. Thanks, Greg. I appreciate you just giving me bad credit all of a sudden here. So Beth, from the standpoint of, I think, we've kind of dove into what are some of the things that pop up on title. And, obviously that's a big part of what, a great title company does is they go through and they help, alleviate some of the, blemishes on a title, or clouds, I think is what they are called from real estate school, if I remember correctly. Yeah. And so from that standpoint, though, one of the things that I've heard for years and years and years is, when I go to a closing, everybody's like, man, I wish I could just bring a stamp with me, or I could, can't we just do a thumbprint here and sign all these documents in one step? And I think now, like you alluded to when we started the show here, with coronavirus really just changing everything instantly, you guys are way ahead of the game, it sounds like, when it comes to this digital signature process. And I think that's one of the new exciting innovations that's probably going to come out of this, is it's going to give people a new option versus just going into a title company, everybody sitting around a table signing documents for an hour. I think that's going to be a very positive change that comes out of this, is it's going to speed that process up. It's going to make it a little bit more efficient for people that are trying to get closed on a property. Is that fair, or what are your thoughts there?
Right. Yes, I think absolutely. I think the closing experience probably from here on out is going to change. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because like you said, why do buyers have to come in if they're getting a loan to sign a big stack of paperwork when they signed everything else digitally up to that closing part? So I'm excited about it. It's just neat to see how it's taken us a long time. We're usually slow in title, and title's not one of the most glamorous parts of the closing, but it's great to see us get there. We've needed to get there for a while. And there's a lot of hoops that we're going to have to go through to get there, but we're getting there soon. And it's pretty exciting.
Oh, absolutely love that. I think it's going to be a very positive step in the right direction for the entire industry. And it's, going to make things a little bit more efficient for everybody involved, and save me some 4:00 trips in the afternoon sitting in traffic.
Yeah. And what's great for homeowners is I expect we're going to see a transition of closing schedules and times. Traditionally the buyers and sellers come in Monday through Friday during the week, during the day hours, and they sign their paperwork. Now, when remote notarization takes effect and we can notarize documents digitally, I could notarize your signature through a platform and witness you signing without you physically have to be in my presence. Mm-hmm. It's great, because I think we'll see a transition where buyers can sign their loan documents at the comfort of their home at night, and a notary can notarize their documents just like we're on today. It's pretty neat, and I'm excited to see it happen.
So let me ask you a question about that.
Okay.
When we get to that point, right? Again, Ryan's selling a house, I'm buying it. Now he's paid everybody
this time,
right?
Thankfully.
But in this near future, Ryan is the seller. He signs all his documents at home. Me as the buyer, I sign all my documents at 8:00 on a Thursday night or whatever. And then what? So,
and that's where the industry is going to have to figure out how they want this to play out, as far as, when do we transfer keys? Since it's not at a closing table, everyone will have to determine what's the next steps in getting the process through to make everybody happy. And something that I see happening is we're going to reiterate the role of the real estate agent a lot more. We're going to let the buyers and sellers know, even though you're not physically at a closing table, it's so important that you have a real estate agent, a realtor out there who takes care of everything before that physical signing of the documents. They have your back. They're watching the numbers and the inspections and the appraisals. They're making sure everything gets you to that closing signing. And just because it's not at a physical closing table, your relevance and importance is key. And it's just going to be a transition to get the logistics of how it all plays out, as far as keys and everything else. So we will go to real estate agents for their input as well, to let us know where do you see this going, and what role do you want us to play in this. So it's nice to be able to work together. We have some great, lender and realtor partners, and everybody has been wonderful through this transitional time. So it's pretty nice.
Beth, that's interesting you bring that up, because I didn't even think of that, leading up to this. But I just had a closing with you guys here, and I never even met the buyer. He was up in Canada. Seller was already moved out of the house, and you guys went way above and beyond. But everything in this transaction was 100% digitally done. There was no, everything was FaceTiming through a house. Our walkthrough was FaceTime. The inspection was, done over video. I mean, everything was 100% done that way. But that was something that, to your point on what you just talked about, those final little details when everybody shakes hands and, gets those keys, that was a little messy, on that closing. It was a little messy because everything, I think we had sellers in one state and the buyer in Canada. And it was just like everybody was in different parts of the country, did things at different times. And then that final, cherry on top of the experience, I felt like I dropped the ball a little bit, because things just weren't there to put that cherry on the top and make sure that the buyer's 1,000%
right. And in that particular situation as well, we had an issue with the border getting closed, where the buyer couldn't come across the border, or fear that if he did to sign his documents, he couldn't get back. So there were so many nuances to that transaction. But what is neat is I think we'll see these over time, but really quickly, I think we'll adapt. I think we will realize, okay, one part we didn't think about, because this is a new experience, is, we forgot about how are the buyer going to get the keys. And I think in a short period of time, we're going to figure it out. I did a couple curbside closings last Friday in our one of our offices, in our Avon office, and we had the buyers and sellers. They came at different times, because we did basically a curbside closing, because we wanted to protect everyone and make them feel safe. So we did, the sellers in the morning and the buyers came in the afternoon, and no one had thought about, oh, wait, funding, where's the keys? Do I come back to the parking lot to get keys? But what's great is everyone has been nice and accommodating, because we all want the same thing. We want to close homes. We want to keep the economy moving. We want buyers and sellers in their homes. We don't want anyone to be homeless. So we're just adjusting the best we can, and things change daily, of course, with new government regulations and everything that's going on. But what's cool is we're seeing agents and lenders and buyers and sellers just being very cooperative and very friendly about, we'll get through this. And it's almost, if we were throwing new technology in there and new closing situations, normally I think it would be a little rougher, but everyone's being very kind, and just we're getting through it together. So it's really cool.
Agreed.
So let me jump in here for a second, Beth.
Okay.
For the people listening that don't have any idea what curbside closing means, can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So with the pandemic that's been going on the last few weeks in Indiana, especially, we are trying to limit our face-to-face interaction with the public, just for their safety and our closers. So we now offer, if you have a cash buyer, we can send buyers documents and they can sign electronically. They physically don't have to come to the closing. If we have a buyer that's getting a mortgage, we still have physical paperwork at this point they need to sign. So we have two options. They can either come into our office, or to limit touching and people in the office in close proximity, we are doing now what's called curbside or drive-up closings. So you could actually come to our office, go out, pull it up, you call us, you let us know you're there. We usually send the documents to you email ahead of time so you can review those. And then once you get to the actual closing in the parking lot, our closer comes out with a mask and gloves, and you can have a mask and gloves as well. We stand safe distance, 6 feet away outside of your car, answer any questions you have. We notarize the documents, but then we limit the exposure for people in the offices. There are times that people are still coming into the office, but when they do that, we're doing video conferencing through iPads, the closer in one room, the parties in another room. So we're just adjusting to make sure everybody stays safe.
Wow.
That's so cool. Do you offer coffee with that service, or you bring a sandwich too?
No. We've actually had a lot of real estate agents and lenders send our closers lunch over the last couple of weeks. That's been really kind, just to get them through the day, because they're still, we're essential workers and we're still trying to get the job done, but it is a little scary at times, but we're just trying to make the best of it and be safe. So
right. Most importantly, Beth, as we kind of wrap things up here, I mean, title's obviously evolved a lot, and I think you've done an extraordinary job of kind of laying it out for people that may not be as familiar with the process. But what are your thoughts as we look forward here? Obviously, it's impossible to know everything that's going to change, but what do you see being a lot of the main positives that come out of the coronavirus and the changes that are going to happen within the industry because of it? What are you most excited about? What's that look like in your mind?
For me, I think it's the technology piece where it allows us to have more flexibility, not just us, but the buyers and sellers. I think that's going to be exciting. You well know that buyers want to see houses sometimes on the weekend because that's when they're available, or in the evenings. This will give them that extra flexibility for the closing piece of it, because we've never really had a lot of flexibility with the closing timeline, because they do have to physically sign in our presence. And when remote notarization is a true reality and all of it's played out, that piece of having to physically be in your presence is taken away and gives the buyers more flexibility. I would rather be sitting in my home signing documents on on my iPad or my laptop versus going into an office, making an appointment, taking off work, that kind of thing. So I think that's, for me, I see that the most positives for everybody, just flexibility, and just, it's better. We should be in the technology age that we are in title and real estate. And this is going to force us to get there at a fast speed. And I think it's pretty exciting, to be honest. I think it's long overdue.
I agree. Well, Beth, we definitely appreciate taking a few minutes out of the day to pop on Blue Collar Real Estate with us here today. And is there anything else that maybe we haven't dove into that would be really important for, our audience is mainly made up of real estate professionals, and then people that are considering real estate as well, not only from a profession standpoint, but also people that are just going through the process as well. So is there anything else from any of the different perspectives that would be important for somebody to know, or just maybe misconceptions when it comes to getting a house closed and the title process specifically?
Yeah, so I think this is a big transition for real estate in general, as far as processes, and we're changing from traditional closings. And there's a lot of technology and platforms that the lenders and the title companies and the agents are going to have to get familiar with and use. So I think just some grace with understanding this is an adjustment period. It may take a few months, 6 months even, for everyone to get used to the new normal. And just so maybe just having a positive mindset that yes, there's going to be some kinks. It's going to be maybe a slower process than we would like, but we're going to get there. And just keep that in mind. This is all for the better. So I would just say that.
Would totally agree. So, well, we definitely appreciate your time and popping on the show. And Greg, is there anything else we haven't talked about yet today?
Dude, huge thing. Don't forget to what?
Oh, like, comment, subscribe, we need to hear from you. We want to talk and hear what's on your mind, everybody out there listening. So reach out to us. You know how to track Greg and I down. But Beth, how can any of our guests, if they have title questions or just questions in general about the real estate process, how can people get a hold of you? How can they track you?
Okay, so our www.abstract-title.com is our website. We have been sending out newsletters. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. We are putting out videos constantly of all the changes because it's changing daily with real estate and what's going on right now. So I just encourage everyone, if you have any real estate transaction coming up or in the future, or you might be in the future, watch those videos, stay on top of the new changes and what's going on, because it's changing quickly. And the more you're educated, I think the better and more prepared you'll be.
Amen to that. Couldn't have said it better. So Beth, we appreciate you taking the time to come on the show today. And again, everybody, if you don't mind, like, comment, subscribe, hit that little dinger bell in the top right-hand corner to get the notifications that new episodes have dropped. And Beth, thank you very much for popping on the show today.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Right.
Stay safe. Wash your hands. Wash your hands.
Okay, so that wraps up this episode of Blue Collar Real Estate. Thanks for watching. I'm Greg Mayo.
And I'm Ryan Hergott. Thanks so much, everybody.